Hey everyone, so today we're drawing an undersea city, and this is one that was built on top of a mountain and then the sea level kind of slowly rose over time, so it went undersea pretty peacefully, which means all the buildings are going to be more or less untapped, but of course covered with corals and all of that. This is based on a City in a Dungeons & Dragons game that a friend of mine is running, so it's kind of got a bit of a magical otherworldly vibe with, glowing corals and all that kind of thing, and a little bit strange architecture. So to start, I'm putting in my kind of different layers of buildings. I'm trying to build it out so there's a sense of depth to it, with the ones kind of nearer to the peak being farther away. So we've got the different size buildings all layered on top of each other. Then this one I didn't draw in a terribly linear fashion, to be perfectly honest. I kind of bounced about depending on what seemed interesting to me at the moment. So where I started, of all places, was with the decoration. And I kind of wanted to give it a little bit of like a Greek vibe, sort of. Greek in the Assassin's Creed Odyssey sense, maybe not like realistic Greek. So I made these little banners with the pretty blue colors and then ended up just copying them for everything, so I was a little bit lazy and didn't want to redraw it. After that, I went to doing the base colors, which really should have been the first step, but like I said, I kind of bounced around on this one. And with those, I'm keeping in mind that it's supposed to have depth to it, so closest one's lighter, farthest one's darker. From there, I kind of bounced back to decorations again and started working on windows. This is where I kind of started departing from the little bit of a Greek theme that I had going with the banners and ended up just drawing random pretty shapes. That is the nice thing with doing something fantasy related, is it doesn't really matter whether your architecture makes any sense, because no one cares. There's no realistic thing to compare it to. After I drew the window, I went to starting to think about what texture I wanted on these buildings, and I think they're going to be built out of different stone blocks. So to divvy those up, I'm making this layer that I can then put on top of the base layer to kind of give the feeling of bricks. So just dropping down the opacity kind of makes it look like it's supposed to be part of the background. And from that, I did a similar thing to how I did the little blue banners, where I just copied it and kind of tweaked it a little bit to stick it on all the different surfaces. This kind of copy and adjust is really nice when you're lazy, because it takes so much less work. That said, the bricks still took me a really long time, and I think it might have been quicker to make a custom brush to do the bricks for me, and then just draw it on, but I'm not very good with custom brushes, so I don't know, I'm not sure which one would have been faster in the end. This worked, and it ended up looking nice, so I can roll with that. Overall, sticking it together was a little bit of a pain on the vertical surfaces, since they're a little taller than my original pattern was. So there's a couple places like that big tower where I kind of had to piece it together to make it actually work. So with that done, I went back and kind of adjusted the window a bit and got the colors right, and I started copying that onto surfaces as well. Made this little row of 3 of them, so that was kind of a nice number to fit together on most of my buildings, and just tossed that in a couple places. Another reason I'm not super concerned about all this being copies is it's going to get a lot of stuff layered on top once we start doing water textures, so I don't think you're going to be able to tell in the end. Speaking of water textures, so first thing I did was just kind of pick some colors, figure out what schema it's going with. And then a specific request from the friend was that this city has corals in it that are built out of basically magical corals. So they're kind of a white coral structure, but then they glow very vividly, so there's light in the city even though it's deep under ocean. So for that, I played around with the different textures that Krita has and kind of picked ones that to me looked like corals. I will admit I've never seen a coral before, so it's looking like corals on the internet. But again, it's fantasy, they don't have to be terribly realistic, and you can kind of get the idea. From there, I started working on lighting effects. When I do lights, especially fantasy ones, I like to do this kind of concentric colors thing, where I'll start with white in the middle, but then I'll put other colors around it, and then start in the center and kind of blur it out. And that kind of gives a similar sort of look, at least to me, to what lights look like at night. I don't have great vision without my glasses, so things tend to look blurrier than perhaps other people, but for me it looks accurate. At that point I realized I never did anything to my roofs, so I went back and put bricks on them as well. and then added a little bit of texture kind of everywhere and started building that out too. So this is when I started playing with water effects and did kind of a different mix. I've got two different layers in there for the different gradients, one of which is just for color and then another of which actually cuts out the bits around the corals to make them glow better. And that kind of helped meld everything together but also let them pop still. With all of those layers set up, the last thing I did was go through and blur the lines. This kind of makes it look like things do underwater, where you can't quite see straight lines anymore and everything's a little bit wavy and kind of just pretty in the end. And that more or less did it. I had a lot of fun with this one. It was great to just mess around with underwater things and different textures, and I hope you guys enjoyed it well. Bye now.